Hello everyone, this is going to be part 2 of the grenade tutorials. In the last video we learned how to create this. So a simple grenade with some visual and sound effects, and then if it touches the floor it will leave some destruction decals. Today we're going to learn how to do a flashbang with also visual and sound effects. So this is what it would look like. The beep at the end of the flashbang will, the volume will be determined by how far or close you are to the grenade, and we'll be doing two ways to do the white on the screen. So this effect you see right here, one is a bit more complex and the one is really simple, simply using a widget. First I'll show you how to do it with the widget, and then I'll show you how to do it with materials and a scalar parameter. So first things first, in the third person blueprint we're gonna add another input, and this is gonna be exactly the same as we did in the previous tutorial. We simply spawn actor of class whatever. We get the get world location of where we want the grenade to spawn at the beginning, and then we want the rotation of the player camera. So this is exactly the same. The only thing that changes is that we were gonna, here we'll put the flashbang blueprint. Next thing we need to create here is a custom event. For now, forget about this. We only need to create a custom event which will have all the logic for the visual effect you have on screen. So for now we need the input to spawn the flashbang and the custom event. Next thing we're gonna do is the blueprint for the flashbang. You can simply duplicate, if you already have the grenade blueprint, you can duplicate it, and we're simply gonna do some changes in it. But for those of you who are starting from scratch, I'm gonna go over everything anyways, so don't worry. So we simply get a blueprint class of type actor, open it. In components we add a mesh, and inside this mesh we want to add the static mesh that we want and the material. In this case I used, as in the previous video, I simply went to window, fab, typed flashbang, then filtered by price, and this is the one I ended up using. So you simply click on it and add to project, and it will automatically add to your existing project. This one we're not gonna need the radial force. We don't need it in this one. We only need the projectile movement. The settings are gonna be exactly the same as with the previous tutorial. So initial and max speed are set to 1500. We want the projectile to bounce. The bounciness is going to be 0.5, and the bounce velocity stop simulating threshold is going to be 500. I already explained why this number is going to be 500 in the previous video, so check it out if you want to know why we put it like this. But the short answer is that we need this event on projectile bounce. So inside projectile movement, once we've set these parameters, we scroll down and we click on projectile bounce. Since we are gonna play a sound every time the projectile bounces, we don't want the projectile to bounce for too long. That's why we set the number to 500. So we play sound at location, which in this case is gonna be the location of the grenade. So we get world location, plug it in. This is the same sound I used for the other grenade, which is object snaps to grid. I simply right clicked, create a queue, added some attenuation, so the further you are from the bounce, the less you will hear it. And I added to the actual sound a modulator, so it's not as repetitive every time. We change the pitch and the volume every time it plays. Here. The next thing we're gonna do is on event begin play, if you don't have it already, event begin play. We're gonna cast to our third person character since we need the reference later on. So we get player pawn, cast to third person character, and we promote this to a variable. And then we're gonna do exactly the same as we did with the previous grenade. We're gonna do a sequence. One is gonna be for the simulate random rotation. As you can see, there's a lot less floats on the screen. I thought it looked better when I simply had this float add to the existing rotation and then set the new rotation. I did change the track a bit. I simply moved this key further along, so it's at 1.8 and the value is of 5. So throughout the whole throw it will still rotate, and it's only at the last moments that it will stop. And then this float is simply plugged into the existing world rotation of the cylinder. If you don't know how to get this node, it's really simple. You get the cylinder, so your grenade, drag it in, right click and convert to validate gate. If it's valid, then we want it to rotate. If it's not valid, we stop the timeline. From this one we get the get world rotation. We split the structure pin and then we set the world rotation. We'll go back to the sequence. First thing is how much time until detonation. It's going to be the same as the other grenade, 3 seconds. We also want to promote the world location of the cylinder to a variable we're going to use later on. In this case, because it's a flashbang and it doesn't cause destruction, we don't need to know if it's on the floor, so we skip the sphere trace by channel. We're simply going to go directly into the visual and sound effects. For the emitter, what I did was, if you go to the starter content, here, and particles, for the grenade we used this one. For the flashbang I simply duplicated this and changed a few things. So as you can see, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 components. For the flashbang I deleted the ones I was not interested in, so I simply kept the sparks and the smoke and used this one here. World location, this variable we used. Rotation, scale, everything else is left to by default. Then we want to play sound.location. This sound is gonna be the same sound as explosion cue. I simply changed the name, except here I did increase the pitch so it wouldn't sound exactly as the other grenade. If you have better sounds, of course, use them. And then once this is done, we want the player to hear the ears ringing at the end of the explosion. First I tried to do it with the play sound.location node, but this has a problem. In theory, because the sound has attenuation, so the further you are away from it, the less you will hear it, I thought it would work, but if we try it out with this node, what happens is that even if I'm far away from the grenade when I throw it, and after the fact I get close to it, the sound increases and decreases, and we don't want that. We only want the volume to be calculated when it detonates. So instead of using this one, we use play sound 2D and we do a series of calculations. So what we want to calculate is when it detonates, we want the distance between the grenade and your player. So you can use get player pawn and get actor location, or because we already did a reference to our player character, we can also do it from here, whichever you prefer. Once we have the distance, we're going to do a map ranged clamped. So this basically means if we're on top of the grenade, so the distance is really close to 0, the volume is going to be 1.5. So that's the volume multiplier. So 1.5 times the default volume. If we're 1000 units of distance away, we are going to be at 0 volume, so we won't hear it. If you want to debug or show the distance, just to calculate this number better, you can actually debug, draw sphere. We can simply get the world location. We're going to put a radius of 1000 to see what that looks like. A duration of 10 seconds. And then we go back here. That's the sphere of 1000 units. So I couldn't hear the beep because I was outside the zone. But if I'm inside, you can slightly hear it. If I get closer, it's much louder. We don't need this anymore. Once we do this, we're gonna determine if there should be a visual effect for the player. For this, we're gonna do a line trace by channel. It's gonna go from the camera of the player, so we get our reference that we did at the beginning, we get the camera and then the world location, and the end of the line trace is gonna be to the world location. You can do line trace or a sphere trace by channel, it doesn't really matter, to be honest. And then we're gonna do 3 checks. The first check is, do we hit something in between our camera and the flashbang? If we do not hit something, then we want the flashbang effect. Meaning that if there's no obstacle between us, the camera, and the grenade, we will get the flashbang effect. We also want to check how far away from the flashbang we are. So we get the world location, get player pawn actor location, we get the distance between the grenade and the actor. And if it's less or equal to 1000, then we do get the flashbang effect. I put 1000 simply to have the same number as with the sound. The last check we're gonna do is this one right here, where we're gonna compare the angle of the camera to the look at rotation between the grenade and the actor. So from the third person character, we get the camera and we get the location of the camera. We're gonna find the look at rotation between the grenade and the camera, and we're gonna subtract it from the rotation of the camera. If this float is between these angles, so either this one or this one, then we can have this flashbang event. So we should be close enough for the flashbang. There should be no obstacle in front of us, and we should be looking more or less in the direction of the flashbang in order to get the flashbang effect. from the third person character reference, we get the flashbang effect. This is the event, the custom event we created here. And finally, we destroy the actor. We want to destroy the actor regardless if we get the flashbang effect or not. And that's about it here. So the next thing we need to do is the actual visual effects. So if we go to our third person character, the first effect we're going to do is the widget flash. So we're going to do that right now. So inside our throwables folder, I created one called assets. Oh, by the way, the this explosion ears, this sound I couldn't find in the starter content or in Fab, so I downloaded it from Pixabay. I'll try and remember to put the sound and the author in the description of the video, just in case you want to also get it from there. Yeah, and I made a cue out of it, which has a simple modulator that changes the pitch and the volume, like in all of them. Okay, back to this. Okay, so we're gonna first do the widget, blueprint class, user widget as the one we want. We created. And the first thing we do is here we add a canvas panel, and inside the canvas panel we add an image, and for the image we want the anchor to be the whole screen, and we set the rest of the variables back to 0 so it covers everything. We also need to make an animation for the opacity of the screen. So what we do is here we click on animations, we add an animation, and you call it whatever you want. Once this is done, you click on add, and you will add here the image 29, which is, yours might be called something else. Mine is called image 29. Then you will click here on the plus and select color and opacity, and this will appear. We're interested in the opacity of it, so what we do is at the end we click here to add a new keyframe. So if I were to click here, another one is created. We want one at the end, which will be 0, and I want the white to be completely visible for around 0.5 seconds, and then it starts to decrease in opacity. Once you've done this, save, and the only thing left to do is go into the graph, and on event construct we simply say play animation, and the fade animation we grab it and we put it here. And that's all we need to do in the widget. We can go back to the third person character. We create a widget. So create widget. We add the widget we just created, this one. We add it to the viewport, and after a delay of 2.75 seconds, we remove it from the viewport. This delay will depend on how long your animation is. In my case, the animation is 2.5 seconds. So from here to here, it's only 2.5 seconds, so a delay of 2.75 should be more than enough. And then we remove from parent. And that would be the basic flashbang effect completely done. The other effect I'm talking about is this one right here. It's a bit more complex, but not that much. And what you achieve with this is this effect. So there's a bit of distortion at the end of the white from the flashbang. To achieve this, we're gonna first of all need to add a new component to our third person character, which is gonna be called post process. This one. After we've done this, we want to go to our assets and create a new material. Here. First thing we need to do is when we have this selected, we're going to change the material domain to a post process. And then we're going to put these nodes. So the first thing is the texture coordinate, then a simple add node. These numbers you can also experiment with so you see the, I'll show you. I have to disconnect this 1 second. Okay, so this is the effect we're trying to achieve. If you change these numbers, this will also change. Okay, and so the way you get this node is by typing scene texture, and here in scene texture ID we want the post process input 0. Then we want a mask for the red channel, a mask for the green channel, and a mask for the B channel, and we want to make this a float. This float we're going to add to a color. I think this is achieved by pressing 3 on your keyboard and then left click, and here you can select whatever color you want. In my case I chose white, and then we're gonna get the scene texture post processing input 0 again, mask RGB, and lerp between this and this. In this case you're seeing an alpha of 0.5. If I were to put 1, you wouldn't see only white, and 0, nothing at all. Now we need to create this parameter. So here we're gonna create a material parameter collection, this one right here. We open it, and in here, scalar parameters, we're gonna add one array item. We're gonna name it intensity, and the default value is going to be 0 because we don't want the player to be affected by this if there's not any flashbang. We can close this now, and we can just click and drag this here, and in here the parameter name we need to change this to intensity, and then we can simply plug it in. If your default value is 0, you should be seeing this completely normal. Now we finished here, and we can go back to the third person blueprint, and the first node we're gonna do is a set scalar parameter value. We add the material parameter here. We select the name. In my case we only have one, so it's intensity, and we want to change the value to 1. The other thing we need to do is in our post process, in rendering features, we're gonna add one array element, which is gonna be the flashbang effect. So this material right here is what we're gonna put here. Then after a duration of 1 second with the value being 1, we're gonna add a new timeline, At timeline, we're going to create a float that's going to go from, the length is going to be 2 seconds. Depends how long you want it to last. This float is going to have at time 0 value of 1, and then this key is going to have a time of 2 and a value of 0. And this is how we're going to change gradually the parameter value back to 0. Set scalar parameter value, which is the same node as here. We put it here. And this is now up to you if you want this effect or this effect. And you should have something like this. And that's the end of the tutorial. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to comment or ask me anything. See you in the next one.